Hello, hello, hello. This is Chris Ferdinandi from GoMakeThings.com. And today we are answering a viewer question around web components. So I recently had someone ask whether you can nest web components inside other web components. And if you can, what that looks like. Do you need to use the Shadow DOM? Can you do it with HTML web components? How does that all work? If you have questions like this yourself or questions about anything else you see in any of my videos, please feel free to leave a comment below and let me know. Also, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, because YouTube likes it, lets other people know that my videos are worth watching. To answer the actual question, so if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, the short answer is yeah, you can do it. Works great. I do it all the time. If you want to learn the nitty gritty of how that all works, though, please keep watching because I'm going to get into all of that. The short version here is that there's two different ways to approach this. The first is when you have web components that are unrelated, two separate pieces of functionality. One just happens to live or get rendered inside another one. I use that all the time. The other is when you have one big component that has a lot of complex functionality, and it's easier from a code authoring and code management perspective if you break that up into smaller child components that are all part of some bigger component and they all depend on each other. We're going to look at both of those in detail. I'm going to show you actual examples. We're going to code one up. So if you want to learn how this all works, keep watching. Real quick before we dive into it, though, I did want to mention that this video and others like it are made possible thanks to the generous support of my Go Make Things members. A recurring membership helps me create more videos like this and also get you some cool perks. So if you'd like to learn more about that or join yourself, head on over to gomakethings.com/join. Cool. With that out of the way, let's get coding. So the first one that I want to look at is when you have two unrelated web components. This is the one I tend to use most often, and it works really well with the HTML web component approach that I advocate. So if you're not familiar with HTML web components, I will link somewhere up here to a video I did not that long ago showing that approach and how it works. But let me show you an example real quick. So I'm actually in the the private digital garden of mine that Go Make Things members get access to. And over in the toolkit, I have a bunch of pre-made web components. So this is a good place to kind of show how this works. So let's jump into, let's say, toggle tabs, and let's go with show hide. This is just a really simple, kind of easy to use one. So with this one, you click, you expand some content, you click again, it's hidden. And with toggle tabs, we've got some tabs that toggle. And here, let me zoom in so this is a little bit easier to see. Yeah, so you've got some tabs that toggle, some tabs that toggle. You can navigate with a keyboard as well. And so under the hood, these are an unordered list and some associated divs with anchor links. And when the web component loads, it creates this. And for show hide, we have a button and some content, and they get associated with each other. So what I'm going to do, because I actually have a live code playground in my digital garden, we're going to we'll drop in the show hide web component, and then if I scroll all the way up, inside one of our tabs, we will add show hide. So for example, let's go like this, down all this so it looks pretty. I'm not even going to change it for now. So you can see what's happening here, right? We've got our parent web component, our child web component, and inside here, I can show and hide. And this works because this web component is not destroying the HTML in any way. It is doing what you would generally consider old school DOM manipulation. So if I were to look at the JavaScript on this, actually there's a better way to do this than coming in here. If I just scroll down to the bottom, we can see it on page, and it's highlighted and it's all big. So when, wow, I am zooming all over the place. Sorry. So when the page loads, I am grabbing some elements, adding some roles, kind of looping through and associating different pieces of content with different elements on the page, but I am not wiping anything out. I'm modifying what's already there, including keeping the content intact. And so this approach works perfectly fine because I've not, I left the page and came back. That's why it's gone. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just kind of nudging and tweaking it in different directions. And for those use cases, nesting web components works really well. This is actually the approach that YouTube itself uses on their site. So for example, the comments section is hidden. Where is the comment? Where are the comments on this? Do they turn them off? Do they bury them? They're somewhere. I see them here. Silly. Oh, here we go. They're down here, right? So you've got your comments and you've got this YTD comment section. All of YouTube's web components start with YTD. And then inside there, they have their spinner component, which is currently hidden because the comments have loaded. But whenever you scroll and they load new comments, that spinner component is going to show itself, do a little bit of spinning. And I'm actually curious if you can make it appear. It only showed up once. It spun and then it disappeared. I'm assuming there's some sort of other attribute on it that makes it also spin. But yeah, they've got these two different things that handle two different pieces of the UI and they nest them inside each other. Works great. Use it all the time in my various projects. Highly recommend it. If you are a member and you jump over to the toolkit, I have a ton of web components here. You can play around with that. You can nest them inside each other to make them do different things. Another one that I've done before is like I'll have an Ajax form that submits somewhere, and then inside there I might have a password field, and I'm going to use my toggle password component to enable someone to show and hide the password. That's actually if you look on the member site on the sign-in page, that's actually the pattern that I have literally right here live in the site. So I've got my Ajax form and I've got my toggle password nested inside it. Two different components, handle two different things. Real fun to play around with. So that's one option. The other one, the one that I have done less occasionally, but is equally valid, is when you have a very complex web component and managing it all as one web component makes the code base really unwieldy. You can break it up into smaller web components that a parent web component renders, and then each of those individual pieces handles its own isolated behavior. So for the rest of this video, we're actually going to build a web component family that works that way. And we're going to use a really, really dumb, so simple you would never actually use this approach for an example, but the fact that it's so simple makes it easier to wrap your head around. So we are going to build a count up component where you have a button that counts up. You're going to have a piece of UI that renders the number of counts. We'll have a button that resets everything. And we might even have a place for some sort of status notification, maybe. We might not need that. We'll see how it goes. So let's actually jump into the HTML. So I have a count up component and I'm loading a JavaScript file and a style sheet that we might not need. I just get everything set up just in case. I don't really have this super planned out. We're going to build it in real time together. And I've got an empty JavaScript file. So the first thing I'm actually going to do, I'm going to jump over to my bookmarks and I'm going to grab the web component boilerplate. And I'm just going to steal this whole thing. We are not going to need attribute changed. I don't care about connected callbacks yet. And for this one, I don't think we need handle event. What we are going to do is inject some HTML. We are not using the HTML web component approach for this, this is going to be a JavaScript rendered situation. So what I'm going to do, every one of them is going to start off with count up. So we're going to say count up, let's say display. That's going to show the number of times we've counted up. We're going to have count up trigger, and let's go with count up reset. And right now I'm just going to show these in kind of whatever order. I'm not going to worry about styling. In another world, like if you want to run with this, I'll drop the source code down in the show notes, but in another world, you could take this and like wrap it in some sort of grid pattern and have things laid out nicely and that sort of thing. I'm just not going to bother with that. But we're going to do it. And I need closing elements for all of these. Count up display, count up trigger, and count up reset. All right. So when this loads, it's generating some additional HTML. And currently that's all it's going to do. So if we look at the page, we are doing none of that. Why is that? Source count up JS, count up. Oh, because this just says my library. We didn't define our actual component. There we go. Cool. So now you can see we've got these three other pieces here. Let's go ahead and create each of those. So we're going to duplicate. So we'll have count up. What did I say I want to do? Count up display. Yeah, we can't do that. Count up display. All right. Count up display. And inside this one, for now, we're just going to show a, so we're going to do this. We're going to go div role equals status. This is going to be, it's not really a status. It's Aria live. Yeah. Aria live equals polite. And we are going to, well, I guess let's define a property, right? So define properties. We are going to, on this one, we're going to say a count. It has a default value of 0. And we are, you know what? I'm going to do this a little bit differently here. Ready? So we're going to inject some HTML. So let's say this, what do we want to call this, right? This, I'll just call it the UI. Document create element equal, nope, that's not how that works. Can't type today. Div, this UI set attribute. Wow, I cannot type. Aria live, polite, and then this UI text content equals, there we go. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to say clicked this count times. Cool. So if I save this and render, it helps if I load all of the files. So we're gonna, let's say display, trigger, and reset. We're gonna keep these all in separate files too, because it's gonna make it really nice to manage them. We only have one right now, so we'll get rid of the others. Cool. Display, it's not showing anything. Why is that? Define. Oh, because I didn't actually append it to the UI. So we're going to say this append this UI. There we go. So let's create HTML, inject HTML. If you don't add it to the UI, it doesn't show up. General rule of thumb. Cool. So we've got our container. Next, we want a trigger. So let's go ahead and duplicate trigger inside the HTML. We will unload that, count up. Nope, that's display. Count up trigger. In here, we're going to create a button. We have no properties on this one. Document create button. We'll append this all in one. Well, no, you know what? We'll do it separately, right? So this button text content equals, let's just say click me, right? This append this button, and then we're gonna listen for click events on the button. This button add event listener click, and then we are going to use the handle event method for this one. So handle event is this really cool way to listen to events on web components. With the add event listener method, if you pass in an object instead of a callback function, and that object has a handle event method in it, it will automatically run whenever the event is triggered, and it will receive the event object as an argument. And because a class is an object, this works. So for now, we're just going to log that to the console. But what we should see is a button. And when I click it, we get clicked and we get our button. All right, cool. And then the last thing we want to do is we want to add the reset button. So we'll save that. I'm going to use the trigger for this one because this one's also going to have a click event. So count up reset, and we'll go reset. And what are we going to do here? So we'll say reset the count, and we're not going to do really anything else at this point. All right, cool. So click me, reset the count. One thing I will do, just to give this a little bit of styling here. So we are going to say inside our count up, we've got count up display. So we will count up display block with 100%, margin bottom 1 rem, and I'll give it just a little bit of space. Cool. So we've got our basic UI, and it's handled by 3 separate components, each managing their own thing. Now, the next big thing that we do here is we're going to emit events when things happen. And so for that, I'm going to dive into my helper functions. I've got an emit helper function here that I use to emit a custom event when things happen. And we're going to pull that into each of our web components here. We might only need it for reset and trigger. I'm not sure that we need it for the display. I think the display maybe just receives things. Maybe. We'll see. So I'm going to customize this a bit. So we don't need the type. We will accept the detail, and we don't need the element. So it's really just the detail is the only thing I care about here. And so what I'm going to do is for the event type. Now, normally I like to do like a naming convention that like you have the name of the component and then a colon and then the event, but it makes it hard to use the handle this or the handle event method in other components if you go like this. So for our purposes, I'm going to stick with more of the JavaScript convention where it's all one word, no casing. So we're going to say count up reset is the name of the event. It bubbles, it's not cancelable, so we can get rid of that. And we will we'll append some detail, and we're going to dispatch it on this, so on the web component itself. And we're going to do that in our trigger as well. Only we're going to call this one count up trigger. And we'll drop one in the display, but I don't, we're not going to, there's a world where I could imagine where you have like a max count set. And once you reach it, you want to do something about that. But I don't think we need to handle that yet for here. You know what? We'll do this, right? Count up display. We're just we'll leave it in here for right now. We probably won't need it. But we'll delete it if we don't. So what we're going to do is when we click the count up reset button, let's do this. Let's say, confirm. Are you sure this cannot be undone? And if not confirm, so here, I'll break this up, right? So we'll say let double check equals. So we want to double check the user actually wants to do that. If no double check, return. Otherwise, we are going to emit. And we need, now that I think about it, we really need no details on this. So I can take this off. It's just an unused object. So all we need to do is bubble. And whenever this gets clicked, it's going to emit a count up reset event. On the trigger, we are going to do the same thing, except we're not going to confirm. The user's just clicking it, right? So we're going to say this emit. And for our detail, we don't need anything yet, but we will. So I'm going to leave the detail in on this one, but we're just going to emit it. Now, back up in our display, this is where the magic starts to happen. So let's pull in handle event again, because we're going to use that. And for this one, we're going to listen for a couple of different events. So we're going to say this, and then on, no, actually, I like this better. This event type handler. And then we're going to pass in the event. So then we can have a bunch of different event handlers for the different types of events, and we don't need to like manually check what they are. And so for example, we will have a count up reset handler, and we will have a count up trigger handler. And I'm just gonna copy these. Handle trigger events, handle reset events. All right. Now, we're not actually listening for these. So that's going to be kind of the last part of these. And for now, we're just going to log the event type. So that'll be the only thing we do. But in our constructor, we're going to grab the parent element. So these all bubble, which means they're going to bubble up to the count up element. So if we attach our listener here, we can listen for all of these events just within our parent component. So in here, I'm going to say, listen for count up events. And we're going to say, first we're going to grab the parent, which equals this closest count up. And then parent add event listener, and we want count up trigger. And we're going to do this again. We want count up reset. All right, so we've got this almost full circle. If we jump over here, let me beef up this section just a little bit. Event type is not defined. What did I do here? Because it's not this event, it's event type. And that would be why I typed that in wrong. Yeah, okay, cool. Reload. type is not defined. I did not remove that from my helper because we don't need that part. You probably caught that because you're very smart. I missed that because I'm moving too fast. All right, let's try that again. So click me, count up trigger. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Count up reset event runs. Perfect. Awesome. So now we have this circle, these different things talking to each other. Now we are ready to actually handle some things. So the rest of the magic for now is going to happen in count up display. So when the trigger happens, we're going to say this count plus plus, and then we're going to do this again. This UI text content equals clicked this count times. We reload. So now clicking the button in this separate component, it's only handling the interaction around the button. The display is only handling what it should show. So we've got this nice little separation of concerns. Now, again, if I were building this, I would put this all in one component because this type of component is really simple. But in a real world component that has a lot of complexity, imagine like a robust video player and commenting system, you might want different little subcomponents to handle different pieces. It makes reading the JavaScript files a lot easier, in my opinion. And that's why I sometimes like this. Now, in the reset, we are going to, we're going to swap this out. So we're going to say this count equals 0, and then we're going to render the UI again. Now, one other thing here, we're kind of repeating ourselves a little bit. So I am going to have a render function that's going to do this, right? So render the updated UI. That way we don't have to remember what this text string is. So we can instead just say this render. We'll do that. We'll do that everywhere. It means that if we ever change that text, we don't have to remember to do it in a bunch of different places. And now we can go and and it resets. So we've got the full loop here. So the main point currently of this parent element is to just render the child components. But in a good web component, you're also going to have options and settings and things like that. And a parent component can be kind of the intake API for that if you want it to be. So for example, let's say we want to do something like max count. So we never want this to go above 20. And for intervals, we want, let's do 21. You'll see why in a second. For intervals, we want to count up by 3. Maybe we want to change the confirm message, or we want to make that be an option, right? So we'll say reset confirm equals you sure yo? Bad idea, right? Just something like that. This is dumb, but just bear with me. And that's good for now. Like, we don't need a ton of options. This is just to kind of show you how this might work. And within our count up here, we're going to pass those along, right? So let's do this. So we're going to say get options and settings, right? And let me just grab these because I am forgetful. So we're going to say let max count equals this get attribute max count. All right, we'll repeat this 3 times. So we're going to say intervals equals get intervals, and reset confirm equals get reset confirm. Cool. Now, we don't want these to always be required. So we will do this, right? So if max count, then max count equals max count, otherwise empty string. And here we go. We'll do that. So we're just going to conditionally render these values only if they're needed. So we'll only pass them along if needed. So on trigger, we're going to go with intervals. I don't know if you picked up yet, but there's one attribute for each of the different components. So we'll say reset confirm and get attribute. If the attribute doesn't exist, this returns undefined. So this will return as a falsy value, and this won't render. Reset confirm. Cool. And then in each of our different things, we can we can get some of those attributes. So this intervals equals this get attribute intervals, and if that's not defined, we will. So if it's falsy, we will. Oh, that's the other thing, right? So we want to go parse float, because that's going to come back as a string. We want it as a number. So if that's not a truthy value, then we're going to use 1 as our default interval. For the reset, let's just take this whole string here, right? And we're going to say define properties. This confirm message equals, and so this will be our default, right? And we'll try for this get attribute. I literally forgot what it was called. What is it? Reset confirm. There we go. Reset confirm. And finally on the trigger, we've got the, oh, I did this wrong, right? I did on the display. Yeah, no, that shouldn't be right here. We're gonna go here. We'll bring that. Okay. Define properties. We're gonna do the interval here. You'll see why in a second. And on display, we're gonna say max, and we'll get intervals equals, was it max? Is that what I did? Max count. Okay, cool. Max count, and we will have a value of -1 as the default. We could should probably do infinity, but I like -1 as a. Oh, actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll go false. There we go. -1 is a thing I learned from WordPress, but I think false is better. It's more accurate. Okay, so we're going to be very explicit here, and we also want that to be a float. All right, cool. So in our count up, we're going to do a couple of things. So we're going to say, actually, we'll come back here for a second. Let's go to the trigger first. So in our detail, when we emit, right, we're going to say interval equals, or let's say amount. Yeah, we'll call it interval. So the interval is going to equal this intervals. So we'll send this along directly from the button to the display. In our reset for our confirm message, we're going to say this equals confirm message. And inside our display, we are going to do two things. So first, make sure we are not at the max count. So if this max and this count is greater than or equal to, I guess just equal to, right? Because we shouldn't go past it. Past this max, we're going to return. So we're going to do nothing. Otherwise, we're going to increase the count. And in this case, we're actually going to say this count equals this count plus event detail interval. So rather than just increasing by 1, we're going to increase by whatever interval was provided. And we should see everything working, hopefully, fingers crossed. So click me goes up 3 times. Once we get to 21, it does not go up any higher. If I reset, it says, are you sure, yo? Bad idea. Hit OK. And if I were to here, right? So let's add some X's. And then this is not the correct value anymore. So now, ooh, we go up by nan. That is not right. Why is that? So what do we got going on here? Oh, okay. So let's go false. I guess we'll explicitly make these false. Nope. Okay. So that wasn't the problem. The problem is something in the trigger. So it's this, right? So if, so we're going to go let interval equals, oh, yeah, no, I'm doing this right. So let interval equals, so we're going to say, oh yeah, no, we can do this, right? So we'll do this. And then we're going to say, where is it? MDN is nan. I always forget how this works. I got to look it up. Number is nan. Okay. So that's really easy. We just pass in. Okay, right? So intervals. Number is nan. Intervals. So if it's not a number, we'll use 1. Otherwise, we'll use interval. That should work. Intervals is not defined. Okay. You dum-dum. There we go. All right. Okay, cool. Now we're in business. Now everything works the way it should. Dumb little bug. Cool. And then if we get that away, we count it by 3 instead. Awesome. Cool. So we've got a working app, working web component, whatever. I am going to drop all of the source code for this down in the description. I don't love or use this approach all the time, but I do find that it is really useful for, like, I've built some components for clients before that were really big and did a lot of stuff, and breaking it up into smaller components just made it a lot easier to manage the different pieces. You can render it all in JavaScript the way I have here. You could also manually render some of this stuff as an HTML web component, which is useful if you're doing server rendering, or if not all of the different subcomponents are going to be present in all of the different pieces of UI. So you have options there as well. There's no kind of right way to approach this. One last thing, just before you go, I did want to mention that I recently decided to stop selling expensive courses that most folks can only afford with a corporate training budget, and focus on creating more excellent free content, including YouTube videos like this one. And if you enjoyed this video, a recurring Go Make Things membership is a great way to support the channel. It also gets you some free perks, including access to my Discord community, as well as my massive digital garden that includes a ton of courses and learning paths. You track your progress as you go. I've got a bunch of reference guides on a ton of different topics. You can bookmark your favorites and quickly access them. You've got this huge toolkit of stuff, and you can join for as little as $3 a month. Even that small of an amount is a huge help to the channel. So if you like what I do and you want to support me, head on over to gomakethings.com/join to learn more. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.